twin needles. I just love twin needles. You can get different widths between the needles and you can get different types. So I've got ballpoint to sew with stretchy fabrics, an embroidery one to sew with embroidery threads, jeans for heavy fabrics such as denim, a metal fill, which means you can sew comfortably with the metallic threads, which otherwise could shred on a normal needle. I've even got a triple needle, so 3 needles on one shank. And then you get universal needles, which you can sew most woven fabrics with. So these have different gaps between the needles. 2mm gap, perfect for pin tucks. If you want a 6mm gap, you get 2 perfectly parallel rows, which will actually look like the hemming you get on lots of shop bought garments. So the first thing to look at is on the needle, it's got a flat back on the shank, and like any other needle, flat to back, and you put it up into the needle hole in the usual way you would with a single needle. Tighten the screw with your hand and then finish tightening it with the screwdriver. The next thing is to thread the machine. You should have a spare spindle in your tools kit. You pop that in the hole that's designated for it, or if you don't have a hole, you'd put it onto the bobbin. I'm going to pierce the end of the thread so that the glue from the end cap doesn't get stuck on my spindle. I'm then taking both threads together, take them through the thread path. When I get down to the needle, I'm going to have one going behind the needle, the last groove on the left and the other on the right. If you don't have 2 grooves on your machine, have one going through the groove and the other one not. Cutting the thread at an angle, I then thread it. And if you've got an automatic needle threader on your machine, I'm afraid you can't use it with a twin needle. So cut the thread at a 45-degree angle so that you can thread it through the eye of the needle easily. And that's it, it's all set up to go. Because I'm doing pin tucks, I'm going to increase the tension to the highest that it will go. It's one of the few times that I will play with the tension. I've also got a pin tuck foot on, which has little grooves underneath it. You can do pin tucks without a pin tuck foot, but obviously it's easier with. So I just stitch perfectly straight, parallel rows using those 2 threads. And then I do another right next to that one, and I can keep doing that for as many pin tucks across the width of the fabric as I want to. So I've popped that last pin tuck into the end groove, do another one, and so I continue. Each time I'm getting 2 perfectly parallel rows. So on the top, 2 perfectly parallel rows, and you can feel slightly raised. And on the underside, you get a little zigzag going across, because on the bobbin thread, of course, there's only the one thread. So that goes across. So the effect that you can achieve are these lovely, neat, perfectly parallel rows of pin tucks. So that's pin tucking with twin needles. But of course you can also do some decorative stitching. I've changed the needle to one with 6mm between the 2 needles because I want to show you how you do the top stitching that you get on hems of shop bought garments. So again, I lower the presser foot, lower the needles. I've also reduced the tension down to about 3 because unlike the pin tucks, I don't want the fabric to have that little tiny raised bit between the 2 rows. I want it to stay flat. There's my hem, 2 perfectly parallel rows of stitching on the right side, and on the underside it's got this little zigzag where the bobbin has gone between the 2. But that's not all. I can also do decorative stitching. This time I've changed my needle so that I've got 3mm between the 2 needles. I've put 2 different colour threads on the machine, so each needle has a different colour thread coming through, and I'm going to use a decorative stitch. Now if your sewing machine has the option to tell it you're using a twin needle, you do so, and when you choose a decorative stitch it won't let you do one that is too wide for 2 needles. If you've got a machine that you haven't got that option, then you need to turn the balance wheel on the side by hand to make sure it goes through the whole sequence before you actually put your foot on the foot pedal. So I've checked that it's okay, and off I go. Remember, with decorative stitches, the fabric's often going backwards and forwards a little bit as the needles go backwards and forwards and side to side. So don't pull or push it, just guide it gently. So there I have two perfectly parallel rows of a decorative stitch. So two different colour threads, and it can look really attractive if you have row upon row. So on this bag here I've got two rows. This was just a simple zigzag, and again the blanket stitch. On this cushion I've divided it into panels, and on this panel I've done twin needle stitching with all of these different decorative stitches. I think it looks really fantastic.